It is down. It is over. And the Irish have knocked off number one Clemson.
Herbert's got it. Stiff arm again. Quarterback in the clear. Inside the 10. A hat-trick of touchdowns from Justin Herbert.
So
it's Joe Montana and maybe Quinn. That's pretty.
I bet you Montana ain't even on there.
No,
Probably
Montana's
not.
actually not on there because actually Montana did not have that great of a college career, believe it or not.
Okay, real quick, how much of their NFL careers impacted your choice?
I didn't. No, I only did college. I only did their college career.
Yeah, and I mean, same here. I thought about it, but no, I was the same way actually.
So QB1, Brady Quinn, obviously, was a Heisman Trophy finalist. Threw for 11,762 yards in his career at Notre Dame. 95 touchdowns, 39 interceptions. His Heisman candidate year, he threw 32 touchdowns and 7 interceptions and 4,000 yards passing. So my quarterback number 2 is Ian Book. From being the quarterback from 2017 to 2020, he holds the record at Notre Dame for the best completion percentage in school history at 63.8%. And he's also the only Notre Dame quarterback to go to two college football playoffs. He finished his career at Notre Dame with 8,949 passing yards, 72 touchdowns, and 20 interceptions. His best season coming in 2019 when he threw for 34 touchdowns and only 6 INTs.
Wait, what's this quarterback that you just mentioned? I don't know why I blanked out for a second.
Ian Book.
Oh, okay, right.
Number 3, Deshawn Kaiser, was a quarterback from 2015 to 2016. Kaiser completed 422 of his 695 pass attempts for 60% completion percentage. In 2 seasons at Notre Dame, he threw for 5,805 yards, 47 touchdowns, and 19 interceptions, as well as Kaiser almost upset the eventual national championship Clemson Tigers on the road with 3 touchdown performance and hurricane-type weather. Kind of just explains itself. He was supposed to be like the next Brady Quinn. Didn't end up being like that. So for running backs, it was actually kind of hard for me because Notre Dame's actually had surprisingly a lot of really good running backs. But number 1, I'm going to go with Autry Denson. Holds the record for the most yards by a Notre Dame running back with 4,318 yards. Averaged 5.1 yards per carry. Had 43 touchdowns in his career on just 854 carries. Dude was like going back and just watching his highlights. Dude was a beast. Number 2, give me Kyron Williams. He's only the starting running back for 2 years at Notre Dame, but he had 419 carries for 2,163 yards, 27 touchdowns, a 5.1 yards per carry, and as well as 78 catches for 675 yards and 4 touchdowns. Number 3, got to be Josh Adams. He had 480 carries for 3,201 yards, a 6.7 yard per carry, 20 touchdowns, as well as 41 catches for 336 yards and 2 touchdowns, as well as broke the season rushing record for a freshman at Notre Dame. For wide receivers, I think this actually might kind of surprise you guys. I didn't realize that Michael Floyd was actually this good. I was thinking, obviously when you think about Notre Dame wide receivers, you think about Tim Brown, like the last Notre Dame Heisman winner. But surprisingly, a lot of Notre Dame's recent wide receivers actually had way better stats than Tim Brown did in the year he won the Heisman. So number 1, Michael Floyd, he was the Notre Dame wide receiver for 2008 to 2011. He had 271 catches for 3,686 yards, a school record that is still 1,000 yards more than any Notre Dame wide receiver ever. He averaged 13.6 yards per catch, 37 touchdowns, most by a wide receiver in school history. I didn't realize that guy was that good. I knew Michael Floyd was really good, but I didn't know he was that good.
When did he play? Was he early 2000s?
2008 to 2011.
Really? I swore I thought he was a little earlier than that because I swore he was in the NFL that's 2012 still, but I guess my memory is wrong.
Yeah, he was like the only bright side of when we had Charlie Weiss as our head coach. That was literally just it. So number 2 is going to be Will Fuller. He was our wide receiver from 2013 to 2015. He had 144 catches for 2,493 yards, 30 touchdowns, which is the second most in school history, with a 17.4 yards per catch. I didn't realize that dude was that good either. I knew Will Fuller was good, but like 30 touchdowns, and he was only a starting wide receiver for basically a year and a half. That's like unreal. So number 3, I'm going to go Golden Tate. He was a Notre Dame wide receiver for 2007 to 2009. Connor, he might be the guy that you're thinking of. He was a little bit earlier, but he has 157 catches for 2,707 yards, second most in school history. Had a 17.2 yards per catch, 27 touchdowns, along with 31 rushes for 227 yards and 3 touchdowns. So, that's my wide receiver list. This one actually was kind of hard because kind of looking back at it, Notre Dame has produced NFL caliber tight ends.
They're not tight end Iowa.
They produced NFL caliber tight ends. But a lot of those guys actually didn't have that good of numbers in college. So my number 1 tight end, Tyler Eifert, he was our starting tight end from 2010 to 2012. Ended his career with 140 catches for 1,840 yards, a 13.1 yards per catch, and 11 touchdowns.
He only played 2 years.
Yeah, only 2 years.
I just remember he was never healthy in the NFL, and he was.
I'll tell you right now, based on all of my research I've done on college tight ends, 1,000 yards in 2 years is a good career. Is a really good career.
Well, he almost had 2,000 in 2 years, which is.
Yeah, that's a really good career because most guys end with. I mean, if you play 3 years, they're usually around 1,000 after 3 years.
So yeah, number 2, Michael Mayer. He's our starting tight end, up for like a bunch of awards preseason this year. Actually holds the record. Right now is second most behind Tyler Eifert in receiving yards for a tight end in Notre Dame history, and he's only played 2 years. Even while missing some time with injuries last season, he still had 71 catches for 840 yards and 7 touchdowns. Had an 11.5 yards per catch, and right now in his career he has 113 catches for 1,290 yards and 9 touchdowns. Dude's just going to be a beast, and I'm already saying he's going to be 1,000-yard tight end this year. I'm already calling it. So number 3, Kyle Rudolph. I thought he would actually be higher on this list, but looking back, he didn't have really that much. He didn't have really good stats. I mean, I guess for a tight end, you could say he did.
He was a better blocker of the 3.
Yeah. He played alongside Golden Tate and Michael Floyd at the same time, so he didn't really get a lot of touches compared to what Eifert and Mayer did. He still racked up 90 catches for 1,032 yards and 8 touchdowns in 3 years at Notre Dame, which is still pretty good considering that he was playing alongside 2 of the top 3 Notre Dame wide receivers of all time. For O-linemen, I'm going to go ahead and go Quentin Nelson. That's easy. He might be the best Notre Dame offensive lineman ever. And it's just crazy to think that 2018 team, we had Quentin Nelson and Mike McGlinchey, along with Ronnie Stanley, all on the same offensive line. And we still couldn't win a natty. Mike McGlinchey's number 2. Number 3, Ronnie Stanley. Number 4, Zach Martin. And then number 5 is Aaron Taylor, who is the only Notre Dame offensive lineman in the College Football Hall of Fame.
And he's the only one that isn't memorable compared to the 3 you just said.
Yep.
Zach Martin and Q are probably going to end up being NFL Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
I would say Zach Martin probably already has a gold jacket, if I had to guess.
What about Quentin Nelson?
Q, he was hurt like all year last year, so because he's only been in the league for what I think last year was his 4th year.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think he missed like the whole season. So, I mean, can't really say anything yet because one injury can ruin your entire career. But if he has a bounce back year next year and does crazy, then yeah, I mean, nobody pancakes people like Quentin Nelson. So,
and Mike McGlinchey could be really good too. He's just got to stay healthy, man. He hasn't been able to stay healthy for the Niners.
Yeah, I see him as a probably a higher end NFL player, but not so much as like He's not in that tier.
It's the same thing with him and Ronnie Stanley.
June.
Ronnie Stanley's really freaking good, but like he just can't stay healthy.
I would say that Ronnie's probably in that same tier as well, where they're high end offensive linemen, but they're not on the level of these guys like Trent Williams and Quentin Nelson and Zach Martin and Tyron Smith and these like crazy dudes.
For my best Notre Dame D lineman, I kind of forgot this guy played for us until I was looking into it. You guys know who Justin Tuck is, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
Dude,
with one of the best face masks of all time in the NFL that one time.
But for the best Notre Dame defensive lineman, number one is going to be Justin Tuck. He played at Notre Dame from 2002 to 2004. He had 42 tackles for loss, 24.5 sacks, just as a sophomore. He registered 73 tackles in his career. He still is the Notre Dame single season leader in sacks, and nobody's even came close. Number two for the defensive lineman is a guy by the name of Corey Minor. He played from 1995 to 1998. He had 276 tackles. He was actually a 5-star, one of the highest rated Notre Dame recruits of all time, but he kind of didn't pan out according to what he was supposed to do. But he still had a great career with 44.5 tackles for loss, 22.5 sacks, and also had 5 interceptions as a defensive lineman. After him, it's going to be Stephon Tuitt, man who just retired from the Steelers. He was our starting defensive lineman from 2011 to 2013. As a sophomore, Stephon Tuitt had 13 tackles for loss and 12 sacks. Many people thought he was going to take Justin Tuck's record for the most sacks in school history. Battled with some injuries, but still ended his career with 126 tackles, 25 tackles for loss, and 21.5 sacks. So for linebackers, my number one, obviously, Manti Teo was a Heisman Trophy finalist. Played for us from 2009 to 2012. This dude's stats, actually, if you look into it, were pretty insane. He holds the Notre Dame school record for the most tackles by a Notre Dame player with 437 tackles in a career. He had 34 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks, 7 interceptions. Dude was an all-time GOAT at Notre Dame. It's just sad that his kind of career was kind of tarnished.
Most of those stats were his senior year.
Yeah, which is crazy to think about. I think that something about he had over 200 tackles his senior year, which, like you had said in the last stream, it's like everybody just ran straight to him.
Exactly. Yeah, like 200 tackles, all 7 interceptions, or like he had like 6 or 7 in his senior year, and
all 7 of them came senior year.
That's it's fucking crazy.
Number 2, I'm gonna go Jalen Smith, 2013 to 2015. He had 284 tackles, 23.5 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks, and 1 interception. He was really good for Notre Dame, but it's kind of like how it is in his pro career. He had really high expectations, and while he was still a really good player, he never really met his full potential at Notre Dame or in the pros. So number 3, I'm going to go Jeremiah Owusu Coramoa, the good old JOK, one of the hardest hitting, probably the hardest hitting linebacker Notre Dame's ever had. He only played 2 seasons at Notre Dame and was only a starter for 1, which was the 2020 season, but he still had 142 tackles, 24.5 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, an interception, and 5 forced fumbles, and 4 of those fumbles he returned for a touchdown, one of which was against our good old Clemson Tigers. So, yeah, give me Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah for my number 3. I did edge. We don't have to do edge, but I'll just go through it really quickly.
I think we just include that as D. I'll just give you 1 or 2 edge, I guess.
I had Julian Okora. He played for 2016 to 2019, 79 tackles, 24 tackles for loss, 15.5 sacks, 2 interceptions, and 5 forced fumbles. Him and his brother Romeo were so good.
Don't they both play for the Lions now?
Yeah, they're both the edges for the starting edges for the Lions right now. So number 2 is going to be Khalid Kareem, 26 tackles for loss with 108 total tackles, 14 sacks, and 4 forced fumbles. So my starting corners, number one's going to be Todd Light. He played from 1987 to 1990. He was a lockdown cornerback for Notre Dame during their last national championship run. He had 161 tackles, 11 interceptions, and 21 pass breakup. Number two, I'm going to go with my good old boy Julian Love. But as a sophomore, Love shattered the Notre Dame single season passing breakups record, passes defended record, by having 20 pass breakups and 23 passes defended in his sophomore year. He finishes his career as Notre Dame's all-time leader in pass breakups and passes defended. He had 176 tackles, 5 interceptions, and 39 breakups. You can kind of, I guess, call me a Kyle Hamilton fanatic, but I really think he is the best safety Notre Dame's ever had. So he's my number one safety. Just as a freshman, Kyle Hamilton had 4 interceptions and a pick 6 in limited minutes. He finished his career with 138 tackles, 7.5 tackles for loss, and 8 interceptions. So number 2, Harrison Smith. He was up there. He might be better than Kyle Hamilton based on his pro career. He was our starting safety from 2008 to 2011. He finished
Harrison
his career.
Smith?
Yeah.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
He finished his career with 307 tackles, 18.5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, 7 interceptions, and 3 forced fumbles. The dude literally did everything and anything on that Notre Dame defense. So yeah, give me Harrison Smith with that. And then going to kicker. So my kicker is going to be Kyle Brenza. He was the Notre Dame starting kicker from 2011 to 2014. Brenza was the 2013 Lou Groza Award winner. He also holds the record for the longest field goal made in Notre Dame history at 54 yards. He finished his career making 117 of his 119 career PATs and hit over 70% of his field goals. Dude was he's probably my favorite Notre Dame kicker of all time. He was like one of those kickers where like if you were in crunch time, it was just automatic all the time. For punter, give me Tyler Newsome. He's like literally the only Notre Dame punter in probably the last 30 years that has made it to the NFL and actually kind of stuck. So yeah, give me Tyler Newsome. And then for kick returner / punt returner, I'm going to go with Rocket Ishmael. Probably one of the best names in college football history. He played from 1988 to 1980. Was a huge reason we won that natty in 88. He literally, when you say a guy can do anything and he's like an Iron Man athlete, he literally did everything. He had 71 catches for 1,565 yards. He averaged 22 yards per catch, that's the most in school history. He had 4 receiving touchdowns and then 131 rush attempts for 1,049 yards and 5 touchdowns, along with 1,607 return yards for 6 touchdowns. So he finished his Notre Dame career with 4,221 all-purpose yards for a total of 15 touchdowns. My Notre Dame all-time team, Brady Quinn is the quarterback. Autry Denson is the running back. Wide receiver is going to be Michael Floyd, Will Fuller, and Golden Tate. My tight ends are Tyler Eifert, Michael Mayer, and Kyle Rudolph. My O-linemen are Quentin Nelson, Mike McGlinchey, Ronnie Stanley, Zach Martin, and Aaron Taylor. So for my D-linemen, I had Justin Tuck, Corey Minor, Stephon Tuitt. For my linebackers, Manti Teo, Jalen Smith, and Jeremiah Owusu Coramoa. For my edge rushers, I had Julian Okora, Khalid Kareem, Romeo Okora. For my cornerbacks, I had Todd Light and Julian Love, Troy Pride, and Kavari Russell. My safeties, I had Kyle Hamilton and Harrison Smith. For my kicker, Kyle Brenza. My punter, Tyler Newsome. And my kick returner and punt returner, Rocket Ishmael. That team wins a natty for sure. That team wins a natty 100%.